Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here with my second quarter most anticipated releases for 2021. I know this video is going up late, so several of these are going to be out of date, but I still wanted to do this. There's still new releases that I'm really excited about, and obviously even though like the release date isn't upcoming, you can still read the book if they sound interesting. So I'm going to try and do this in a way that is a little easier on me while editing, so there might be more pauses that I just don't edit out, but let's jump into this. By the way, I will link part 1 of this video down below. But starting out with April, there are 3 novels coming out on April 1st I want to talk about. One of them is Rumeysa, a Fairy Tale by Radia Hafiza, and this is a short collection of 3 fairy tales by a Muslim author, and they're kind of reimagined with Muslim characters. So like Rapunzel, for example, wears hijab, and I've seen some really good early reviews for this one, and this just looks really, really lovely, and I'm really excited about this. Next is Sunburnt Veils by Sarah Hagdusti. I think this might just be an Australian release, so it might be a little harder to get your hands on if you're not from Australia, but I just really like the premise for this one. So it deals with political activism. Our main character, I think we've all 2 characters, and our female main character, she has kind of just resigned herself to only crushing on guys in fantasy books that she reads, which is relatable. So our main character is a girl named Tara, and she wears hijab, and she actually wears hijab against her parents' wishes, which I think is something that is not shown a lot in media. And I believe this book also has a romance. I think that the 2 characters actually, they end up being involved together on some kind of project or like working together. I think that is related to the political activism angle, and I just think that sounds really excellent. And then the last one on April 1st is Thornwood by Leah Cypess, and I am really excited about this. So I really loved her story in The Mythic Dream, which was an anthology that I did not like, or I didn't love. I had very mixed feelings on it, and it was the only story in there that I gave 5 stars, so I have been really excited to try some of her longer work. And this is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, and it features the sister of Sleeping Beauty, I think. So it's going to focus on sister relationships, which I'm really excited about, and to quote a little bit from the summary, the first in a 3-book series of fairy tale retellings, these are the stories of the siblings who never made it into the storybook. I think that sounds great. We have 3 novels on April 6th. The first one is The Gilded Girl by Alyssa Coleman. This is set in a magical world where I think everybody has magic, but only the elite classes are allowed to keep their magic. And it's also set at a magical school, and we are following a group of main characters who have to team up, and I think they have to save like all of magic from disappearing in this kingdom or this country, and I'm pretty sure that along the way they are going to make magic more equitable. Also on this date, Pride and Premeditation by Tirza Price. I am so excited about this. Really the only things I know about it are a Pride and Prejudice murder mystery, and my friend Hannah from Lit Hermione liked it, and she has impeccable Jane Austen taste. So I'm just really looking forward to that one. And last on that date is Somewhere Between Bitter and Sweet by Lei Ken Zia Kemp. This one I've heard really good early reviews for. I guess it's out now, so not just early reviews, but our main female character is working at her family's restaurant, but she has her dreams of opening up her own pasteleria, and this is a romance between her and this boy who, I think he just moves to town or something like that, and I don't really know that much about the plot of this book, except that the topics it deals with are things like family and immigration. Also, really gorgeous cover, and again, I've just heard good things about this one. I guess I should have given you my little like intro at the beginning of this video, which is that I talk about a lot of anticipated releases, and I only really talk about the things that attracted me to them, that like kind of pulled me to be interested in these books. I'm somebody who likes to be very particular about how much of a summary I read, so for that reason I'm not just going to like give a full summary of every book. I am going to talk about some quotations from those summaries, and I will also put in the pinned comment a link to every single book's Goodreads page if you would like to read more about it. I think that's going to work out better than trying to fit them all in the description box. So anyway, that's kind of how I approach these. I know it's a lot of books. Okay, back on track. There are 4 books on April 13th. On April 13th is Cici Rios and the Desert of Souls by Kayla Rivera. This book has a desert setting, and we're following our main character whose sister was kidnapped by a criatura, and she has to secretly become a bruja, which those are not trusted in this world, with the help of Coyote, who is a legendary criatura who kind of has a soft spot for humans. And I just really like the sound of that. I really like the sound of Coyote's character. Again, sibling relationships sounds great, and I think this world sounds really interesting as well. Also on April 13th, Malice by Heather Walter. This is a sapphic Sleeping Beauty retelling that features a romance between the princess and the enchantress. And I know Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany read this one recently and really loved it, so that encourages me as well. And I also know this is like a very kind of slow build sort of fantasy story, which I'm fine with, and it's also high fantasy, which I love. So yeah, I'm really excited about this one. I know that some people were disappointed with how high fantasy this was, but I think it sounds good. And then last on April 13th is The Last Wind Witch by Jennifer Adam. This follows a main character who has magic powers, but they're kind of fickle. She's not very good at controlling them. And she somehow catches the attention of the Wicked Queen, and she has to flee in order to learn more about her magic and how she can save the kingdom from this evil queen. 5 novels on April 20th. The first is She Drives Me Crazy by Kelly Quinlan. This is a YA contemporary with fake dating and hate to love, and it features a sapphic romance between I think she's a basketball player and a cheerleader. And I've just heard good things about this one, and I know that this book also deals with like girls in sports, and specifically things like how cheerleaders are looked down on as not being real athletes and things like that. So I've heard that the romance is really good, and also that the other topics are really well done too. Also on April 20th is Sugar and Spite by Gail de Villanueva. This book features a love potion gone wrong. So our main character, she is, I think, trying to put a love spell on somebody just to like make them be nicer to her or something, but it goes wrong and it starts affecting, I think, everybody in her town. And from the summary, this one is also going to deal with a lot of discussions of free will and consequences, and like why love potions are not okay. And that is like a very specific thing that I really enjoy reading in books, when like these like love potions or love spells, like when you actually like examine those and realize how messed up they are. So I'm really looking forward to this one. And then also Nightingale by Diva Fagan. This is a heist gone wrong story. So our main character, she steals a sword that somebody else wants. He's like a prince or something. And because of this, she accidentally gets chosen as the Nightingale, who is this fabled hero who is chosen to defeat an ancient evil that is waking up. Also on April 20th is The Forest of Stolen Girls by June Her. I really loved her first novel, which was The Silence of Bones. I thought that was a really compelling, really well-written historical mystery novel. And this one sounds very similar. I think it's going to deal with some difficult subject material, but I think it's going to be a really fantastic book. So our main character's younger sister was kidnapped years ago, and then I think she did come back, but obviously she wasn't quite the same. She's been always kind of haunted by these things that happened to her, and then many years later, more girls start disappearing, and their father goes to try and figure out what is going on, and then he disappears as well. So these two estranged sisters have to work together to try and figure out what happened to these girls and where these girls are disappearing, like why this is happening. And again, I think this might be difficult to read, but I think it's going to be a really excellent story. And then last on April 20th, I have The Making of Biblical Womanhood, How the Subjugation of Women Became Gospel Truth by Beth Allison Barr. This is a nonfiction book that I saw my friend Mary Margaret add, and this is kind of what put it like officially on my radar. But I just think this sounds like such a great book. It's going to really like deconstruct this idea of subjugation of women and how a lot of people try and make that they try and pass that off as a principle of Christianity when it actually isn't. It's a very new thing, and it's an interpretation that is not actually anywhere in the Bible. So I'm really looking forward to this. This one is another one that I think has gotten like really good reviews so far, and I just think that sounds like really like a necessary and important book. Next, I have 2 Austen retellings to talk about, one of them on April 22nd and one on April 23rd. The first is The Secret Life of Miss Mary Bennet by Catherine Cowley, and Mary ends up visiting this old castle, and while she's there, she starts noticing some weird things, and she ends up kind of getting wrapped up into a murder mystery. And this to me sounds like a little bit of Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen, plus a murder mystery, but with Mary Bennet as the lead, which I just think that sounds really great, so I'm excited for that one. And then on April 23rd is Jane Austen Investigates, The Abbey Mystery by Julia Golding, and this is a middle grade mystery following a young Jane Austen as the main character, who has to solve a mystery at an abbey, and I think it involves a possible ghost, so I think both of those sound really good. 2 books on April 27th. The first is Between Perfect and Real by Ray Stove, and this I actually got as a recommendation from R in Kathy Treithart's theater video, which I will link down below if you haven't seen it. I actually got to participate in it, and I loved it, and I just really loved hearing everybody's recommendations, and this book is one of them, and it just sounds fantastic. So our main character is Dean Foster, and he is a trans boy whom everyone thinks is a lesbian. And then he gets cast as a non-traditional Romeo in their school play, their school production of Romeo and Juliet, and he has to kind of decide what he wants to do about this. Like if he just wants to let people think that he's a lesbian, or if he wants to essentially like come out again. And I just think this sounds like a really wonderful book, and I feel like we don't really get a lot of stories with queer characters in this situation where maybe they have come out before, but as time has gone on, they've gotten to know themselves better, and now they have to decide if they want to try and do that again, like if they want to go through that experience again of coming out and hoping people will accept them, or if they just want to kind of like get through it, you know? So I think this sounds fantastic in terms of the themes it's going to explore. I also really like the idea of doing this through theater. As a theater lover, I think that's really cool. So I think this is going to be a real fantastic book. And then also on April 27th is a re-release of The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Gorgeous cover. All I really know about this is that it's a fantasy of manners, and I feel like I'm going to really like this one. And this is like a new, I think she's like rewritten parts of the book and like re-edited parts of it. So this is the edition that you should be reading if you would like to read this one. And then I have one book that, depending on which edition you're talking about, it either comes out April 29th or May 4th, and that is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. And this is a retelling of the story of Ariadne and Theseus, but it focuses much more on Ariadne. It really centers her in the story, and this is kind of mean, but I really do feel like that this book is going to be what The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker was trying to do, which I've said about a couple of mythological retellings before. I just really didn't like Silence of the Girls, but I liked the idea of what it was trying to do, and I feel like this one is going to do it much better. I know Bethany also really enjoyed this one, and like the way this book is described and kind of what people are saying about it, it makes me think of Circe by Madeline Miller, not just because it's a mythological retelling focused on a woman, but because like the things people are saying about how beautiful the writing is and how character focused it is. I think that it's like, I really loved Circe, so I feel like I'm going to enjoy this one too. And I also read Lifestyles of Gods and Monsters by Emily Roberson, which is a very different kind of book, but that was also a retelling of Ariadne and Theseus that I really enjoyed. So yeah, I'm optimistic for this one. And then moving into May, I have 5 books to talk about on May 4th. The first one is Isabel and Alexander by Rebecca Anderson. As you can see, I actually have an arc of this one, and I should have actually already posted my review for this novel, which is spoiler free, so I will link that down below. But this is a romance. It's in their proper romance line, and we're following our 2 main characters, Isabel and Alexander, who are in this like marriage of convenience situation that they both agreed to, but Isabel is realizing that it's not quite what she thought it was going to be. She feels very lonely. She feels like her husband is not paying attention to her, and then just when it looks like maybe they are starting to open up to each other, there's an accident and Alexander becomes paralyzed. And so the book is about how they respond to that. It's about if they can be there for each other and take care of each other and also fall in love at the same time. Also on May 4th, Luck of the Titanic by Stacey Lee. This is based on the true story of a group of Chinese survivors of the Titanic, who I think that we've known about for a long time. Like, I think we've had these records for a while, but obviously they weren't talked about as much because they were Chinese. And I don't usually like Titanic stories, but I really trust Stacey Lee's historical fiction. I've read a couple books from her that I've really enjoyed. I also watched her on a panel on historical fiction. I think it was for the North Texas Teen Book Festival, maybe, that was online. And I just like, I really thought what she had to say about this book and her research for this book was really interesting. And I think also that the main character, like, I think that she's an acrobat, or her brother's an acrobat or something, so that just sounds really interesting as well. Also on May 4th, I have Counting Down With You by Tashi Bhuiyan. This book follows a Bangladeshi teen who she kind of gets like roped into tutoring the school bad boy, and then to make matters worse, he wants her to agree to pretend to date him. I forget why, but I'm already excited. I love fake dating. I also really appreciate that in the synopsis, they specifically mention that as part of the bargain, he buys her books. So I think this sounds like a really cute romance that is also going to deal with some really interesting themes and ideas about family. Next is The Last Fallen Star by Gracie Kim, and this follows a main character who is adopted, and she does not have magic powers, and her sister actually want to share their magic because her sister does have powers, but something goes wrong, and now her sister's life is in danger, and so our main character has to go on a quest and work together with her enemies in order to save her sister's life, and along the way she ends up learning more about family and what it means to belong. Last on May 5th is I Speak Boy by Jessica Brody, and this is a middle grade contemporary retelling of Emma, Jane Austen's novel, that has a little bit of a speculative twist because our main character, this girl, she wakes up one day and she has this app on her phone that lets her, I think it like lets her see what boys are thinking or something, or like it lets her like match up people in her school or something like that, and then predictably things start getting messy and out of hand. Emma is not my favorite Austen novel, but I think this premise sounds really interesting. And then 4 books on May 11th. The first is The Other Side of Perfect by Mariko Turk. This one, our main character shatters her leg and she has to give up ballet and start going to regular high school. and she ends up getting involved in the school musical. There's a romance that she starts developing with somebody, with a boy I think who is also involved in the musical, and this book also deals with racism in the ballet industry, which is still a huge problem today. And I'm just going to read a passage from the synopsis. To move forward, Alina must make peace with her past and face the racism she had grown to accept in the dance industry. She wonders what it means to yearn for ballet, something so beautiful, yet so broken. And as broken as she feels, can she ever open her heart to someone else? Touching, romantic, and peppered with humor, this debut novel explores the tenuousness of perfectionism, the possibilities of change, and the importance of raising your voice. I think all of that sounds fantastic, and I really like the idea of examining what it means to love a very imperfect industry. I think a lot of us book lovers can relate to that with the disaster that publishing is sometimes. Also on May 11th is Unsettled by Reem Faruqi, and our main character moves from Pakistan to Georgia, Georgia in the US, and she doesn't feel like she fits in there. She ends up joining the swim team, and she makes a friend who's on the swim team. And I think the synopsis said something about a sibling rivalry between her and her brother. So I think there is some tension there as well. And I just think this sounds really lovely. I think one of the books that this was compared to was Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga, which I absolutely adored. So I just think this one sounds really excellent as well. Also on May 11th is Long Lost by Jacqueline West. In this book, the main character moves to a new town and she ends up seeking comfort in the library there. And while she's at the library, she reads a strange book that seems to mirror the town, like seems to mirror things that are happening there. And then the book disappears and the main character ends up getting involved in solving this century-old unsolved crime. And there's also some restless spirits in this town. This just sounds so spooky and so good. It reminds me a little bit of the premise for Small Spaces by Catherine Arden, which was a real surprise for me last year. I really loved that book. And yeah, I just think this one sounds like some really great atmosphere, and I'm intrigued by this mystery, this century-old unsolved crime that I think our main character has to try and unravel. Last on May 11th is Where the Rhythm Takes You by Sarah Das. And that is a modern day retelling of Persuasion set in Tobago. So the Captain Wentworth character is a boy named Aiden who comes back to the island and is now a member of a really popular music group. And our main character is a girl who is dealing with grief after the loss of her mother. And she also is having a hard time because people that she cares about it seems like they're wanting to move on. They're wanting her to move on. I believe she also is very passionate about her family's resort that they own on this island, and it seems like not everybody is. So I just think this sounds really interesting. I have yet to find a Persuasion retelling that I actually like. I've read a couple that I really didn't, but this one sounds really promising to me, so I feel like this one might be the one. And I have 6 books to talk about on May 18th. The first is Better, Not Bitter: Living on Purpose and the Pursuit of Racial Justice by Yusuf Salam, who is one of the Exonerated 5. And this is a memoir on prison reform and racial justice. I'm just really excited to read this. I really loved Punching the Air, which was co-written by Yusuf Salam and Ibi Zoboi. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to reading a full-on memoir from Yusuf Salam. The Force of Fire by Sayantani Dasgupta. So this is set in the same world as her Kiranmala and the Kingdom Beyond books, which I have really been enjoying. And this one, our main character is actually one of the Rakosh, I think. She's a Rakosh resistor focused on building interspecies friendships. And then she ends up meeting the charming son of the Serpentine governor, who offers to help her control her fire ability if she helps defeat the resistance, which I think she's actually a part of. She ends up having to pretend to be human, and I just think this sounds like a lot of fun. I don't feel like I communicated the summary very coherently. I like the idea of following a main character who is like one of the good guy Rakosh. Next is Off the Record by Cameron Garrett, and this is a book about a journalist who wins a chance to write a celebrity profile, and then she really gets swept up in this kind of world of like glitz and everything. And this book is also inspired by the Me Too movement. It says that one woman's account leads to another and another. Josie wants to expose the man responsible, but she's reluctant to speak up, unsure if this is her story to tell. What if she lets down the women who have entrusted her with their stories? What if this ends her writing career before it even begins? There are so many reasons not to go ahead, but if Josie doesn't step up, who will? And the synopsis also calls this a moving testament to the Me Too movement and all the ways women stand up for each other. Tokyo Ever After by Amiko Jean. This looks like a really fun contemporary. It's a Japanese-American version of The Princess Diaries, basically. Our main character is a girl who finds out that she is descended from the Emperor of Japan, and so she moves over there and gets like swept up in all of this like that she isn't familiar with. And yeah, it sounds like The Princess Diaries, but better in my opinion. I read quite a few of those books when I was younger and ended up just very, very disappointed in where they went. So I think this sounds like a lot of fun. And she also develops a romance. She's also like struggling, this girl's struggling to adjust to these customs that she's unfamiliar with. And I've heard some kind of like middle of the road early reviews, but the things that people didn't like are things that I think I would like or that I wouldn't mind. So I'm still optimistic. Next is Perfectly Parveen by Olivia Abtahi, and this book follows an Iranian American girl who decides to start acting like rom-com leads in order to get the hottest guy at school to ask her to homecoming. But quoting from the summary, but as Parveen struggles through her parent-mandated Farsi lessons on the weekends, a budding friendship with the boy she can't help but be her unfiltered self with, and dealing with the ramifications of the Muslim ban on her family in Iran, she realizes that being herself might just be the perfect thing after all. I think this sounds like one of those contemporaries that is going to deal with some serious issues, but also have like a really fun premise, and sounds like a cute romance. So I think this sounds really good. Next is Ophi's Ghosts by Justina Ireland, and I think this sounds so fantastic. This is a middle grade historical fiction with a kind of like ghost story element, and it sounds like the ghost story element is going to be used to deal with grief and trauma and some really heavy topics. And as I've said a few times over the last however long, I really like when creepy elements are used to are used for social commentary, basically, and that's what it sounds like this does. The synopsis describes this as a sweeping tale of the ghosts of our past that won't stay buried. This is set in 1922, and our main character, Ophi, used to live in Georgia before the night when a cruel act took her home and her father from her. She ends up starting to work in the manor house where her mother works, and then, to quote again, Daffodil Manor, like the wealthy Carruthers family who owns it, is haunted by memories and prejudices of the past, and, as Ophi discovers, ghosts as well. Ghosts who have their own loves and hatreds and desires, ghosts who have wronged others, and ghosts who have themselves been wronged. And as Ophi forms a friendship with one spirit whose life ended suddenly and unjustly, she wonders if she might be able to help, even as she comes to realize that Daffodil Manor may hold more secrets than she bargained for. I just think that sounds incredible, and as I said, I really love when like scary or creepy elements are used for social commentary, and this sounds like it does that. I have 5 books to talk about on May 25th. The first is Sister of the Bollywood Bride by Nandini Bajpai, and in this book our main character wants to plan her big sister's perfect Desi wedding like their mother would have. I think their mother has passed away, so she's trying to plan the perfect wedding. She also ends up, I think, developing a romance with somebody. I don't know if he's in the wedding party or what, but this is also a romance. And then there is a hurricane that is heading for Boston, which I think is where this book is set. So it's about if she can like pull this off and save the wedding for her sister. And A Sitting in St. James by Rita Williams Garcia. I recently finished her Gaither Sister series and really, really loved it. So I'm really excited that she has a new release coming out. This book is set in the antebellum South, and it's the story of a plantation family and the people they enslaved. It's set in 1860 Louisiana, and to quote from Goodreads, after serving as mistress of Le Petit Cottage for more than 6 decades, Madame Sylvie Gilbert has decided, in spite of her family's indifference, to sit for a portrait. But there are other important stories to be told on the Gilbert plantation. Stories that span generations, from the big house to out in the fields, of routine horrors, secrets buried as deep as the family fortune, and the tangled bonds of descendants and enslaved. I think this book is going to deal with a lot of really heavy things, as you can tell from the summary, and I just think that Rita Williams Garcia does a really great job with the heavy material that she covers, so I am really looking forward to that. That's another one where, like, I don't want to say I'm excited for it, but I anticipate that book being really good. Next is Hazel Bly and the Deep Blue Sea by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a middle grade contemporary story, and it's a story about grief. Our main character is a girl who I think has lost her mother, and she's still having a really hard time with it. And she ends up getting really fixated on this local story of this mermaid called the Rose Maid, and she starts wondering if maybe her mother like turned into the Rose Maid. It's set in a small town in Maine, and I know that Ashley Herring Blake writes queer middle grade contemporary stories, and I have yet to read any of them, but I really want to, and I've heard amazing things about them. And this one is coming out this year. Next is Words Composed of Sea and Sky by Erica George. This is a book that follows 2 timelines, and I've said before that I'm pretty picky with those, but this one sounds really interesting. In our modern timeline, there's a character who is researching this man, Captain Benjamin Churchill, and then in our 1862 timeline, we're following a young woman who writes poetry under this man's name, and then he turns up. I guess he's like not supposed to be real, or maybe he was supposed to have died, and then he shows up, and she, like, the two of them end up falling in love and developing a relationship, but there's this question of, is this man really who he says he is? So I just think that sounds really interesting. I think the mystery element sounds very intriguing, and I'm curious about that one. And finally on May 25th, probably one of my most anticipated releases for the year is Misfit in Love by S.K. Ali. This is the sequel to Saints and Misfits, which is a contemporary that I really, really loved. S.K. Ali is a brilliant author. And I'm really excited for her next book. This one, we follow our main character from the first novel, Jana. Her brother is getting married, and there is a male character in this book who Jana thinks that she is ready to reciprocate these romantic feelings that he may have had for her. But now things start getting complicated because I think there's like other guys that show up. I think this might be like a love square. I don't know. I trust S.K. Ali though, so I am still excited about it. Okay, moving into June. We are almost done, you guys. I have 8 books to talk about on June 1st, and the first one is One Great Lie by Deb Coletti. I'm sorry to do this for this one, but this is an example of like, I really just need to read a chunk of the synopsis to you because I can't do it justice and this just sounds brilliant. So our main character Charlotte wins a scholarship to a writing workshop in Venice with the charismatic and brilliant Luca Bruni, and it's a dream come true. Writing is her passion. She loves Bruni's books, and going to that romantic and magical sinking city gives her the chance to solve a long-time family mystery about a Venetian poet deep in their lineage, Isabella D'Angelo, who just might be the real author of a very famous poem. Bruni's villa on the eerie island of La Calamita is extravagant, lush beyond belief, and the other students are both inspiring and intimidating. Venice itself is beautiful, charming, and seductive, but so is Luca Bruni. As his behavior becomes increasingly unnerving, and as Charlotte begins to unearth the long-lost work of Isabella with the help of sweet, smart Italian Dante, other things begin to rise too. Secrets about the past and secrets about the present. Charlotte will be forced to confront some dark truths about the history of powerful men and about the determination of creative girls in this stunning new novel from award-winning author Deb Coletti. I just think that sounds incredible. The setting, like the mystery, the like dark atmosphere, the thematic content. I just feel like the commentary of this book is going to be so biting and brilliant, and I think the surrounding story sounds incredibly compelling as well. Also on June 1st is A Chorus Rises by Bethany C. Morrow. This is a companion sequel to A Song Below Water, and so it is chronologically after, but we're following a different main character, and that's a girl named Nema, and I feel like the premise for this book makes me think it's going to be like Nema's mean girl redemption story, which when those are done well, I really, really love those. So I'm really looking forward to this. I don't know too much about like the actual plot of what's going to happen, or what this book is going to be about, but I love the ideas, and I also found the Ilocos really, really interesting characters in the first book, and Nema is an Iloco, so I'm really looking forward to this one. I know there were mixed reviews for the first book, but I thought it was really good. Also on June 1st is A Sisterhood of Secret Ambitions by Sheena Bokweg. This is an interesting summary because the first part I was like, yes, take my money, and then the second part I was like, I don't know how I feel about it, but overall I'm really excited. So to read from Goodreads, behind every powerful man is a trained woman, and behind every trained woman is a society. It started with tea parties and matchmaking, but is now a countrywide secret. Gossips pass messages and recipes, spinsters train to fight, and women work together to grant safety to abused women and children. The society is more than oaths. It is sisterhood and purpose. So that part just sounded incredible, and then the second part, I don't know how I feel about it. We're following a main character and 4 other girls who get sent on a mission, and they find out that their target is set to become the next president. So they have to, like, I guess, gain control of this guy. And I think they're all competing for him. So that part I'm not so sold on, but everything else about the synopsis sounds incredible. So I'm still excited. And then also on June 1st is Sisters of the Neversea by Cynthia Lytick Smith. This is a Peter Pan retelling. I'm really excited that we're getting a Peter Pan retelling by an Indigenous author to address and deal with the racism of the original. The author is a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, and our main characters are Lily and Wendy, and they are actually stepsisters and best friends. And then Peter Pan shows up and wants to take them away. Next is The Coming Storm by Regina M. Hansen. This is a fantasy that is set on Prince Edward Island, which sounds super interesting. And our main character is a girl whose cousin comes back, he comes back from, I think, the river or something, and he's soaking wet, silent, and playing a haunting tune on his fiddle. And so she's obviously a little put off by this, and then this cold and beautiful woman shows up in their village, and she's focused on the main character's cousin's new baby, and so it sounds like she might be some kind of like fairy woman or something. Also on June 1st is The Firebird Song by Arne Flores, and this is a fantasy novel where the Firebird many years ago disappeared, and I think the Firebird was like kind of taking care of the kingdom, and now this evil sorceress rules the kingdom, and our main character is a boy who ends up finding the lost princess, and he has to help her, and together they're going to try and, I think, like find the Firebird or like restore order to the kingdom and get rid of this evil sorceress. That's a very haphazard summary, but I really love the story of the Firebird, like that Russian folktale, or the ballet or anything to do with that, so I'm pretty much interested no matter what. But this does sound interesting. Next is another one of my most anticipated releases for the year, and that is Much Ado About Baseball by Rajani LaRocca. This is a companion book to A Midsummer's Mayhem, which I loved. It was one of my favorite books the year I read it. And this is a middle grade contemporary retelling of Much Ado About Nothing, which is tied for my favorite Shakespeare play. I'm really excited for more baking magic or cooking magic. And we're following two kids who are rivals on, I think, like a math team, and then they end up being on the same baseball team as well. But they actually end up getting thrown together and they have to cooperate. And then it says, like, the synopsis refers to some kind of tragedy occurring and how they again have to work together through that. Okay, I am running out of battery, so this is going to be rapid fire round. I'm really sorry, you guys. Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Iyamide. This one I think a lot of people have been talking about already. I think it sounds really great. It's a mystery following two teens at a private academy, and they're both selected to be senior class prefects. They're in the running for valedictorian, and I think they're like academic rivals maybe, but they end up having to team up to stop an anonymous person revealing secrets before it turns dangerous. 5 books on June 8th. The first is Fire with Fire by Destiny Soria. This is a contemporary fantasy novel, and we follow two sisters who are trained to kill dragons, but one of them ends up bonding with a dragon, and she starts learning more about them, thinking maybe that they were wrong to do this, and then the other sister turns to what the Goodreads synopsis describes as mysterious and alluring sorcerers to try and rescue her sister. This is another one I'm really excited about, Daughter of Sparta by Claire M. Andrews. This is a retelling of the story of Daphne and Apollo. I am assuming with actual consent, because if you've read that original story, it's, yeah. But I'm really interested by the ideas of this one. So Daphne wants to be accepted by the city-state of Sparta. She teams up with Apollo and other Greek mythology figures, like they mentioned Hippolyta, which I'm really excited about. And together they have to find 9 stolen items from Mount Olympus in order to save the gods and also to save her brother, who is also in danger from this. So I just think this sounds really interesting. I really like the idea of Apollo as a character having to interact with humans, but sadly I will not be reading the Rick Riordan series because I know some things that happen later that I am not okay with. So this is obviously a very different premise, but this is going to, I think, fill that need for me. Next is We Can't Keep Meeting Like This by Rachel Lynn Solomon. If you guys follow Raquel from Blonde with a Book, I just think that like the way that she's talked about Rachel Lynn Solomon's books makes me really, really excited to read some of them. The synopsis says, a wedding harpist disillusioned with love and a hopeless romantic cater, waiter, flirt, and fight their way through a summer of weddings in this effervescent romantic comedy from the acclaimed author of Today, Tonight, Tomorrow. It looks like there is possible OCD rep, and also Quinn, one of the main characters, is Jewish, and Tariq, the other main character, is Muslim. Next is one of my most anticipated books for the year. I know I've said that a few times, but it's true about all of them, and that is The Hidden Palace by Helene Becker. I have been waiting for this sequel since November 7th, 2015, because that is when I added it on Goodreads when I first heard about it. This is the sequel to The Golem and the Genie, which is one of my favorite books. This also takes place from the turn of the century to World War I. So it sounds like it covers like a wide span of time. So that sounds really interesting. We also have some returning characters, some new characters. Honestly, I don't know what the setup is and I don't need to. I'm so excited for this. And then last on June 8th is The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. This is a fantasy novel with a sapphic romance. We follow a maidservant and a banished princess who has been sent to live in this temple, and together they end up teaming up to overthrow the princess's brother. I have really loved the 2 books I've read from Tasha Suri before, so this sounds great. 6 novels on June 15th. The first is The Magical Imperfect by Chris Barron. To quote Goodreads, set against the backdrop of the 1989 San Francisco earthquake and a town of refugees who came to America via Angel Island, this middle grade novel in verse is about a boy who is selectively mute and a girl who won't leave her house because of a skin condition, and the magical Jewish clay that allows them to help each other. Summer of Lost Letters by Hannah Reynolds. This is It's a contemporary about a main character who discovers her grandmother's love letters. So she ends up going to Nantucket to uncover her grandmother's past, and she ends up learning about, this is like partially about World War II because that's, her grandmother's past has to do with like fleeing Europe during the Second World War. So I think it's going to deal with obviously some very difficult material, but I think that this is also going to be kind of a like summer romance type thing. So I'm interested to see how those things are combined. Also on June 15th, The Hellions Waltz by Olivia Waite. I am so excited for this one. I really loved Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics, which I read last year. Absolutely loved it. I still need to read the second book, even though I know people say it's not as good. But this is the third book in that romance series, and we are following a con woman and a piano teacher. I don't often like thieves or like con artists as main characters, but from the sound of the synopsis, it seems like her target deserves it. And I don't know, like I loved the other book that I read by Olivia Waite so much, and the rest of the premise for this one sounds so good that I'm like, I'm gonna try it anyway. Also, Rhea and the Blood of the Nectar by Payal Doshi. Our main character Rhea lives in Darjeeling, India, and she has to rescue her twin brother. So in order to do that, she has to travel to Astranthia, a land full of magic and whimsy. There, with the help of Zoranther, an Astranthian barrow boy, and Flula, a pari, Rhea battles serpent lilies and blood-sucking banshees, encounters a butterfly-faced woman and blue lizard men, and learns that Rohan, I think that's her brother, has been captured. Rhea also discovers that she is a princess with magic, only she has no idea how to use it. This synopsis also talks about understanding complex family dynamics, fighting for what is right, discovering oneself, and learning to make friends. So I think this sounds like a really fun like fantasy adventure story that also again deals with some deeper ideas, as most of them do. Also Sisters of the Snake by Sasha and Serena Nanua. Absolutely gorgeous cover, and I really love that this is a book about sisters that is written by two sisters. I think that's so cool. The premise for this one sounds a little bit like I was going to say Princess and the Pauper, because the Barbie version is like clearer in my mind. But the original was The Prince and the Pauper. So it's a street urchin and a princess, and they're identical, and they end up agreeing to swap places, but then I think something happens where they have to work together to save their home, or to like try and maybe solve a mystery. As you can see, I'm pretty vague about some of these details. I just know enough to know I'm excited. And last on June 15th is Even and Odd by Sarah Beth Durst. This is about two sisters who have magic that alternates days. So like one day one sister can use magic and the other one can't, and then the next day vice versa, which I think sounds super interesting. And they end up getting trapped in a magical world because of this wizard who is taking power for herself. Which I think it's interesting that a wizard is a female character. That's very intriguing to me. Also, there's apparently a unicorn named Jeremy who's like really fun, and this is another one that it sounds like a really fun adventure story, like these two sisters who have to find their way back home with their unicorn friend named Jeremy, but also some really interesting topics. Like this deals with like borders between nations, like immigration and ecology too, so I think that sounds really interesting. Sarah Beth Durst is an author who I just am always excited to see what she does next, because she does such different and interesting things. So I'm looking forward to that. And then finally, I have 7 books to talk about on June 22nd. And the first one is What White People Can Do Next, From Allyship to Coalition by Emma Dabiri. I recently read Twisted, which is also known as Don't Touch My Hair, and like many people, I thought that was really incredible. So I'm really excited for this next release of hers, and I really like that this book is going to focus, as it says in the title, moving beyond allyship and into action. I just think that sounds really excellent, and I already know that I really love Emma Dabiri's writing, so I think this sounds great. Next is another one of my, I think, most anticipated for the year. This just, like, the premise of this one just sounds incredible, and I actually read, like, the whole synopsis, but I can't really... Anyway, just like check out the Goodreads page because it sounds amazing, but I can't really communicate that. But that is The Lady or the Lion by Amna Qureshi. This is inspired by a famous short story by Frank R. Stockton called The Lady or the Tiger. And our main character is a spoiled princess who I think gradually becomes less spoiled throughout the book, as they tend to do. And she has to ally with an ambassador who like shows up at her kingdom and admits to her face that he is a spy. Which, like, the audacity, it's just, I love that. And they end up having to team up to solve a mystery of, like, I think there's like some kind of sabotage related to these ambassadors, like people trying to sabotage peace between these kingdoms, and then an illness starts spreading, and so things become even more tense. There's a lot of court intrigue. Like, I just think the premise for this book sounds really, really incredible. I have a really good feeling about this one. Yeah, again, one of my most anticipated releases. I think this is the debut, and I'm just really, really excited for it. Next is The Captain by Erin Michelle Skye and Stephen Brown. This is the final book in the Wendy trilogy, which is a historical fantasy series I have really been enjoying that is a retelling of Peter Pan, but we're following Wendy as the main character, and I've just really been enjoying this series. I love Wendy as a protagonist. She's really strong and competent with a really big heart, and I really love her. I'm really interested to see where this final book goes. Like, the second book definitely went in some directions I wasn't expecting. So I'm really looking forward to finishing this series. Also very curious how like certain character things are going to go. Like, there's some characters where it's like I'm still trying to make up my mind how I feel about them in like the best way. So really excited for this. Next is A Season of Sinister Dreams by Tracy Banghart. This book we are following two different main characters. One of them is a country girl, and let's see, I think the other one is like a cousin to the prince, and the two of them have to work together to protect their kingdom from the powerful men who are slowly destroying it. And I think this is a fantasy, so there is like magic involved. And I just think this sounds really good. Next is Darling by Kay Ancrum. This is actually another retelling of Peter Pan. I did not realize I had put so many of those on this list. But this is an urban fantasy retelling, and I think possibly with some kind of mystery element. I don't tend to like gritty urban fantasy retellings so much, but I just feel like I'm really going to like Kay Ancrum's writing. I follow her on Twitter and I really love her there too. So honestly, like, I have been excited to read something from her for a while. And I do think I like the sound of the way she's going to approach this one. Also, My Contrary Mary by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. This is the first in their like Mary trilogy that is like comparable to their Plain Jane or the Lady Janie's trilogy, I think. And it's a Mary Queen of Scots retelling, and she has shape-shifting powers. And the king mysteriously dies, which means that her and her fiance have to like ascend to the throne. I think there's a lot of like court intrigue and everything, and I just really like the like premise for these, which is basically giving historical women better endings. Like, Mary Queen of Scots obviously did not have a good ending, so I'm excited to see how they give her a happier life in this one. I know that My Lady Jane is not a book for everybody, I totally get that, but I personally really enjoyed it. And then finally, ending this marathon video with another one of my most anticipated releases for the year, and that is Witch Shadow by Susan Dennard. This is the fourth? I'm like trying to look on my bookcase. I think it's the fourth. I mean, technically fifth if you count Sight Witch, which you should, because you do need to read it. So I guess this is the fifth, but it's the fourth full-length novel in the Witchlands series, which is one of my favorite ongoing fantasy series, and it's Isolt's book. And Isolt is one of my favorite characters, so I am really, really looking forward to this. I can't really say anything about the premise for this one, because obviously it's like very far into the series, but I am just so excited for this. So yes, those are my most anticipated books for the second quarter, so from April to June. I know this is late, I know it's long, I'm sorry. I hope that you were able to find out about some books that you hadn't heard of before that you think you're going to really enjoy. And I hope that this is like somewhat helpful. I know that some people really don't like this kind of bullet point format, and I totally get that. But I do, like I said, I do link all of the Goodreads pages. I'm going to put those in that pinned comment. As I said, I am just very particular about how much information I want. And personally, I feel like sometimes synopses give away way too much about the story, so that's another consideration. But anyway, please comment down below and let me know if you are really excited about any of these, if you maybe discovered a new book that you hadn't heard of that you think is going to be great. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!